Hello, my name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 165 of Gaming with Grief, and I'm calling this episode The People versus Miles Morales, but I want to remind everybody that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamingwithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Please go there, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the show. You can also write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. You can leave a comment about the show. You can maybe suggest a game you want me to review. Leave a question. Any kind of feedback is good. You can also subscribe to the podcast on either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, and the audio forms of the episodes are up on YouTube if that's your preferred way to listen to the podcast. And I'm on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. And that's it. That's the intro. But I want to remind you, or at least say, that this episode is kind of maybe a series that I'm kind of looking into doing. So on episode, I took a bunch of notes. On episode 97, P.S. I Love You XOXO, kind of funny. I really love their content. I responded to their bracket of who the 50 best PlayStation characters were. Mine was episode 132. P.S. I Love You decided that Joel Miller from the Last of Us series was the most iconic PlayStation character, which is fine. I'm not mad. I read the comments. People are mad at the decision they made. It's the host. I love Blessing and Janet. I think they're knowledgeable. That's what they came to the conclusion. That's fine. But I disagreed. Basically, I don't fault their opinion. It's their opinion. But I disagreed and thought that Kratos was a stronger character. And on my episode 132 that came out on November 29th, I believe 2021, because that would make the most amount of sense, I had an episode called The People versus Kratos, where I dug into why I compared Joel Miller in the Last of Us series with Kratos, and basically the 2018 Kratos. I compared the games. I kind of spoiled both games, and I drew on different scenes in the games to kind of come up with this case that I think that Kratos is actually the stronger character. I did bring up some of Kratos' earlier games because I have played those. Not every God of War game, but many of them. So I was able to do that, but mostly... and the feedback I got, a friend of mine who listened to the episode gave me some really good feedback. But to be clear, you are basically playing two separate games to, compare two characters in two separate games. So that can be a little bit messy sometimes. And I played Spider-Man 2018, and Miles Morales is, of course, introduced there. He's a long-running character in the Marvel Universe. He, of course, has Spider-Man powers just like Peter Parker. He gets them in Spider-Man 2018. If you don't know who Miles Morales is, he is... an Afro-Latino teen from, originally he was in Brooklyn, but I think in the game they moved to Harlem, him and his mother. He gets his powers there. He's pretty gifted, pretty good at school, and I don't want to get into the whole circumstance of how he gets his powers, but he basically gets spider powers. They are different than Peter Parker's powers, and in the comics, they are different universes. So Miles Morales is in one universe, I think the Ultimate line, and Peter Parker is in the other main universe, right? So these things, they never showed the twain meet, as the old saying goes. But in this new iteration of Spider-Man, they are together, which is great. And by together, I mean they are in the same game. So they just put them in the same universe, which I think was a really cool idea, that these two people that wouldn't normally meet are now meeting. I guess I should have said at the top of this, there will be spoilers for Spider-Man 2018 and Miles Morales, I think 2020 is when it came out, 2021. Anyway, it was pretty much a launch title for the PS5. You could also get it on PS4. I'm lucky enough to have a PS5 and play it on PS5. So really... the people versus idea is the fact that originally I did it with two different characters that were in two different games, and that is hard to, not hard, but it is a bigger, in my opinion, leap of logic to, this person's in a different situation, this person's in a different situation. We need to make sure these characters are in the same situation. So what I was able to do is really look back at that and see how I can improve that process. I do like this idea, again, the people versus. And so I'm calling this People versus Miles Morales because I completed Miles Morales. I platinumed it. And there is themes of grief and death and moving on in it between the two characters. And it was really interesting playing it, seeing these themes kind of come up a little bit and really trying to form a argument, or I guess it's an argument, or at least try to show you a little bit like I was talking about in episode 132, which was I like the come up a little bit more than I like the let down a little bit, I mean, I'm not terrible. I'm not one of those people that thinks that a story can't be dark. It can totally be dark, but I think I like the come up a little bit more, and that was kind of my takeaway from episode 132. I like the fact that Kratos is trying to do better. He knows that he's messed up in the past, and he's trying to do right not only by himself, but his son, and he realizes kind of what's on the line. And I think because Joel doesn't want to lose the people in his life, he still continues to make pretty bad decisions because he doesn't want to lose as well. So that's kind of the recap of that. But I think with Miles Morales, what you see is when Miles... I'm basically going to use... I said 3 scenes or 4 scenes that I was going to use to kind of... I don't know, give away my... or like strengthen my argument. But what happened is when I was researching this and trying to cull everything down, it became very apparent that I would have to use more than 3 scenes. I will do them in chronological order, but first I want to talk about some of the main characters in Spider-Man Miles Morales. Of course, you have Miles Morales. You have his mother, Rio Morales. Again, spoilers for Spider-Man 2018. His father, Jefferson Davies, died in Spider-Man 2018, and so they're dealing with the loss of husband, father, things like that. It seems, if I understand the story correctly and reading around and playing the game twice, Rio Morales moves back to her hometown or family apartment in Harlem. I think their family member had passed away and had this apartment, and so she moved in there, kept a lot of the family things, and is actually running for local city council in Harlem and trying to make the city better. There is an energy company that has moved in called Roxanne, run by Simon Krieger. He's played by Troy Baker. I'm sorry I don't have all the actors' names. I probably should have the actors' names. Again, this is a series that I'm trying to refine and everything, so I will write that down again. But Troy Baker's voice is so distinguished. He's been in so much that the moment Simon Krieger talked, you were like, oh, that's Troy Baker. But I think that immediately, he's a bad guy because he's really slick and blah, blah, blah. There was a fight in the very beginning. They are transporting prisoners. This isn't one of the scenes. This is kind of the setup for the game. They're transporting prisoners from, like, high-value prisoners from jail to the Raft, which is the facility that's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, to keep prisoners away from everybody. And Spider-Man Peter Parker and Spider-Man Miles Morales are there to help the police escort the prisoners, and one of them is the Rhino from the Spider-Man 2018. And this kind of sets up like the villains and stuff like that. They defeat him, but Peter Parker is hurt really badly. But Miles saves him, and Miles also realizes he has different powers than Peter. He has like a bioelectricity that he can use to like punch people or leap up in the air and do like a ground strike. It's a cool thing in the game that I like that makes him much more distinguished than, not much more, but just like sets him apart from Peter Parker. And this kind of leads up to the first scene of the game. After everything is said and done, it looked like Peter Parker was going to be seriously hurt by Rhino, and Miles saved him. And Miles says, wow, maybe we should do some tests on my new powers. It comes right in the beginning of the game. And Peter says, that's the thing. I'm going to be out of town. I have to go. Like, they said the country many times, and I saw it written because I had the subtitles on. Don't know how to pronounce it. Peter's basically going to a country with Mary Jane. He's going to do photographs. She's writing a journalistic thing. And he's going to be gone for 3 weeks. And he tells Miles, I'm going to be gone, so I'm not going to be able to do this. So you're going to have to be Spider-Man while I'm gone, the only Spider-Man. He gives him a suit, which is pretty great. I immediately changed the suit when I could. But it looked cool. And Miles is scared. And this is like one of the main, like, second scene of the game, maybe cutscenes and stuff. Miles finds out that he's the only Spider-Man. He kind of freaks out. An amazing song plays while he web slinks through the city called "On My Own" by Jaden. Apparently, the album's called "On My Own." I don't know when the album was released. They had all the info in the video except for the fact of when the album was released. I imagine it was released around the time of the game. I'll say this, Jaden, amazing song and everything. I'm not going to look it up because it's so synonymous with the scene of Miles web-slinging through the neighborhood after he kind of comes to the realization that he is the only Spider-Man in New York for the next 3-4 weeks. Really powerful. He goes and meets his friend Genki, who's been a friend of his through school for a long time. And Genki's kind of the man in the chair. He has an earpiece, so Genki will be calling you once in a while when you have the mask on that, hey, we got to do this. Hey, we got to do that. This is important. That is important. Stuff like that. I found this out. I found that out. Much like the MCU, Spider-Man suit is hooked to haptics, like heart rate data, all that kind of stuff. His visors can scan things. It isn't. I don't remember that being that explained, but you know what? I don't care. He has a kind of a high-tech suit, which is cool. He has some gadgets like Peter. Peter had 8, which got a little bit cumbersome. I remember playing Spider-Man 2018. Miles only has 4, but I think with his Venom powers, they're supplemented. And I think this is a powerful scene. I think this is one of the scenes I want to say that, first off, why isn't... I guess I did a bad job framing this in the beginning, but 2 characters in this game. One of them is Finn. She comes home from dinner for like Christmas Eve. Rio Morales, which is Miles' mother, is, again, running for city council. Hey, let's all have a dinner. We have a surprise guest. Oh, it's Finn. You remember Finn. You went to school with her. They won some science fair thing together years ago. They're just really good friends. The thing with Finn is her brother, he actually wrote his name down, Rick Mason, worked for Roxxon, this company run by Simon Kruger. He is a scientist that worked on this material called Nuform, which is kind of this nebulous energy that is supposedly clean, and it will revolutionize clean energy. The problem is it makes people very sick, and we will find it very soon that Finn is kind of distant at dinner, is kind of cagey about what she's been doing, and come to find out that she is in fact trying to figure out as much as she can and basically stick it to Roxanne because of the Nuform making people sick, and Roxanne tried to bury the information. Simon Krieger, of course, wanted to get to market quickly, sped everything up, like kind of standard supervillain stuff. What I'm trying to say is I think Finn and Miles are both dealing with grief in their own way, and I think I read a description of her. I don't know when this is said in the thing. Her brother, Rick Mason, basically raises her, and her parents have died. I don't know how. But her parents have died, so she's an orphan. Her brother raises her. He goes to college, gets really smart, gets a degree in engineering and stuff, starts working for Roxanne, does the Nuform thing, gets sick, and basically gets cancer and dies. And Finn takes it as a thing to prove that they're doing what they're doing. She basically becomes a terrorist. There's someone called the Tinker. They use a bunch of Roxanne's old tech to build things with a group of other terrorists to basically steal from Roxanne facilities, take their tech, and they ultimately want to get some Nuform to prove to people how terrible it is. And Finn is obviously not telling Miles that. He's obviously not going to tell her that he is Spider-Man. So early in the game, there's these scenes where it's kind of like, oh, what have you been up to? Oh, not much. What have you been up to? It does a good job of with tension and things. I think the next scene I want to talk about is the bridge scene. So this is where Rio Morales, Miles' mother, is giving a speech at, down in downtown Harlem. They're having a street fair thing, which it all looked amazing and fun, and the food looked great. But they are having this thing, and the mom's giving this speech about how Roxanne is just turning people's power off whenever they feel like it, and they don't have to succumb to any kind of regulation that is bad for the neighborhood. They're very clandestine. Basically, all the things you've seen behind the scenes, she's saying that out loud of they can just turn your power off. And what is Nuform? And what are they doing? And, we have to unite against them and stuff. And it's very moving. But some of the underground people show up and want to, I guess, prove how bad Roxxon is. And they start, there's some Roxxon troops there, and they want to engage the Roxxon troops. Obviously, Miles is there in his suit, kind of comes to the rescue, kind of stops both sides. But he finds out that this is kind of a feint because really what the underground wants to do is go to a bridge, which, I'm sorry, I don't know New York. He said it in the game. I didn't write it down. But he's going to this bridge that's going to blow up because Roxanne is moving a shipment of Nuform from one location to the other. And the underground wants to basically steal the new form. And this is kind of like all the hero is lost moment and stuff like that, because not only does Miles try to stop them, but his bioelectricity, since it's new and he can't really control it, kind of ignites the canisters of new form and makes them unstable. Even though the Tinker, who is the head of the underground thing, which you find out is Finn, and in this scene, Miles actually finds out she is Finn, because her mask fades away. This tech isn't really great. Kind of like, it's a nice analogy for him. It seems like she's not really used to her tech at this point. He's not really used to his powers. But her mask fades away and he finds out she's Finn. She still does not know he is Spider-Man. And, hey! So we're looking at really young kittens and my dogs. They're in a little like kitten tent, which is nice to keep them under wraps. But my dogs find any kind of like circumstance to try to eat their food and drink their water. So this is the cats are in there. You can zip them in, but it's ventilated, just like tent material. This is a weird aside on this pod. Anyway, I have 2 kittens. They're adorable. I'll talk about them later. But anyway, back to the game. So Miles finds out that Finn is the Tinker, this person he's heard about that runs the underground. He finds out it's her. His bioelectricity kind of makes the new form unstable. Finn steals one of the things of new form, and Spider-Man fights everybody on the bridge. The bridge kind of explodes because the new form is really just like an unstable whatever and just causes mass chaos. Nobody is hurt, but he finds out he has a new power now, which is camouflage, which he literally just becomes invisible, which is pretty neat, and it really sets him apart from Peter again. I do want to make a quick aside. It will be interesting to see how they balance Peter and Miles, because it has been set up that Miles does have like these kind of unique powers, and Spider-Man now has, the regular Spider-Man powers. And with his gadgets, which is pretty cool, he might be faster. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see if they play differently, because playing this, Miles definitely swings, from what I remember from the 2018 Spider-Man, feels very similar to Peter. He's a little bit gangly, like his swinging doesn't look as fluid. Spider-Man had a really good fluid look to him. Anyway, again, this is kind of like all his lost moment. Miles goes back home, reflects, oh, what have I done? I don't understand what I'm capable of doing. I don't know about my powers. I could have hurt people. The bridge blew up. Luckily, everybody was evacuated, which was great. But it basically leads to, him having to decide what to do and how to move on. And then he talks to his uncle, who is Aaron Davis, or actually Aaron Davis reaches out to him in like a side mission. There's a few times in the game where the game says, hey, why don't you do some side missions before you start the main mission? It's nicer about it, but that's basically what it's doing. You run into Aaron Davis, you kind of freak out and try to disguise your voice because that's your uncle. That's your dad's brother. He's working on the subway system now. He says the subway system is down, blah, blah, blah. You get done with the mission, and he says, hey, Spider-Man, I got something for you for helping out. Get the subways up and running, or the trains up and running. Not subway, the trains. And you say, yeah, what is it? And he goes, hey, I got you unlimited train pass. If you got to ride the trains. And he actually printed his name on it, Miles Morales, which is a great scene. And he's like, did I get the name right? And Miles is like, oh, man, don't tell Mom. And he's like, don't worry, I won't tell your mom, but be careful. Basically, what you find out later is that Aaron is also running a side gig where he had a falling out with your father's side of the family. Your dad. He had a falling out with his brother, Miles' father, because of his life of crime. You find out that he is the Prowler, which is this other person that's written about or whatever, who is a villain, kind of a high-tech suit, a little bit like an Iron Man situation, but he does stuff for Roxxon and other companies, whoever will hire. And your dad found out who he was. Miles' dad found out who he was, and they had a falling out because he's like, this is a life of crime. You can't, I'm a cop. And he's Jefferson Davies is a very good cop. So I really like the tension, and that brings up the next scene. So, to fast forward, Miles is still kind of on the fence on what he wants to do on the underground. He pretends to want to be in the underground to get in Finn's good graces because he knows who she is, and he wants to figure out where the underground base is, and he wants to find this new form that she has stolen because he knows that it is unstable. He also finds information during this time about her brother, Rick Mason, being very sick. and it's really sad. So she, of course, is dealing with the loss of her brother who has just died. She has to bring it up a few times. It's very sad. And I think it was done really well. But here's the deal. Here's the point where the split happens for me, where Miles is at a place where he has also lost a family member. He's lost his father, and he's trying to deal with it. And all the time, he says, he's scared to be the only Spider-Man, but he steps up and does that because he says people need him. And this really comes to a head when I'm literally just fast-forwarding through a lot of interesting stuff that happens between him and Finn in the underground. He fights a bunch of people, but basically he gets captured by Roxxon, and Simon Krieger's there, and Simon Krieger says, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I like this little touch where he wants to take Miles' mask off because they have him tied up in a chair with Finn because he got both of them because they were fighting. Long story short, he got both of them, they were fighting, and he wants to experiment on Miles because of his bioelectricity powers. But when he goes to touch Miles, he gets shocked, which I like that as a way. Because they always have to come up with some weird contrivances why the villain can't take the mask off of the hero, which I was like, yeah. But this was somewhat believable. Basically, after Finn and Miles are caught by Roxanne, they escape. Imagine that. But later, Miles is captured by the Prowler. The Prowler puts him in kind of an electric force field and tells him he is trying to keep him safe and that he wasn't supposed to be caught. That wasn't part of the deal. Miles gets very upset and says, I can't just sit here while other people need my help. And his brother says, well, just wait for all this to blow over and be Spider-Man later. And he says, that's not who I am. You've underestimated me. They fight. And there's a great part where towards the end of the fight, there's a cutscene, and he says, Aaron says, I just want to be family again. I want to be friends with you and your mom. I know I screwed up. And Miles is like, but you lied to me about what you were doing. You fought me, and you just basically were manipulative to get your way, to get me in Roxanne Good's graces so they could steal me or kidnap me. And, and he says, well, I'm family, though. And Miles says, sometimes family isn't enough, And he goes, well, what do you want me to do? And Miles says, I want you to be better. And I think this, looking back on it and planning it, I think this, Peter Parker has his own reason for being Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. But the tagline for Miles Morales is be yourself, but be greater, I think, is, if I'm not screwing that up. And this really, the thing with his uncle, I think, is like the kind of heart of Miles of like, I want you to be better than you're being. I want to be better, Because I think at this point he reflects on the bridge and kind of realizes like, I'm not happy at the turnout, but it happened. And it happened for a reason, And so to me, this is pretty neat. He goes and he finally confronts Finn. They fight, which what I really like about it is, I did skip over a big scene, which was when Finn and Miles are fighting before Roxanne kidnaps them, or gets the upper hand, basically. Finn has his sword at Spider-Man's throat and said, tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now. And Miles takes his mask off and he says, because my mother would be really upset. And I really like that scene, and so Finn gets very upset, obviously, that he lied to her and that he's Spider-Man. And that's how they get captured by Roxanne. They try to have they go to the Trinity Church. They try to have a mea culpa, parlay, if you will, if you're a pirate. And they try to speak to one another like friends. I'm sorry, but, I have to do this. This neighborhood's in trouble. And when they escape, they realize that, Miles realized that New Form through a bunch of files is more unstable and more like a bomb. That Krieger kind of rushed everything to market because he wanted to put New Form on the market. And when Spider-Man is infiltrating the underground, realizes that some of the people that are involved in the underground are getting sick as well off the New Form because it's unstable. So that also is a nice little wrinkle. I'll say this. To fast forward much of the story, now, usually in a point like this, I would be like, this leads to the ultimate fight in the game. But I actually do not like Finn's motivation to the end of this game. And I think this actually should be a reason why the people versus Miles Morales, Miles should be higher up on the chain than Finn if we were ranking a bracket. So Miles understands he needs to do better and be better and will sacrifice himself to save people. He doesn't want, he doesn't want his mother to bury someone else, but he realizes some sacrifices need to be made. Finn, on the other hand, starts up the reactor even though it is unstable and says that Roxanne gets what it deserves. But here's the problem. Miles tries to stop her and says, listen, because like any good evil corporation, Roxanne has a reactor in the plaza of their building, and all you have to do is plug Nuform into it. What a situation. I would hate to see the amount of EPA, governmental, and all the red tape that they had to sign to be like, we're going to put a quasi-nuclear reactor right here, right in the center of the city. Like, oh, is it fake? Is it a model to show people, what will happen or whatever? Is this an instructional video? No, it's a functioning quasi-nuclear reactor. Well, how do you turn it on? Well, the stuff that we're making, yeah, we have that. Like in the back, you just plug it in and the whole thing turns on. You would imagine, the city would be like, I'm sorry, what? But they're an evil corporation, Again, Simon Krieger, I think Rio Morales is the best. Like, who are these people and why do they get to do whatever they want? Because that's what they're doing. They're doing whatever they want. So maybe this is part of this. They're doing what they want. Screw you. We're doing this. So back to the final fight. Finn takes the Nuform that has already been unstabled, puts it in the reactor, and Miles tries to stop her and says, listen, we need to stop this. And she said, no, Roxanne gets what they deserve. And he says, no, and he tells her everything that the audience knows, that Nuform is unstable, that Simon Krieger rushed everything to market, that it is a bomb. She basically armed a bomb, and he tells her that. Now, this is my one big failing, basically with the character as well, and this is why I think Miles is bad. But I think story-wise it's kind of a problem. But Finn keeps fighting Miles. There's a lot of Spider-Man. Keeps fighting Miles as the reactor is, like, quote-unquote warming up. There's these shock waves that come off it that blow up the Roxanne Tower, or at least heavily damage it, while Miles and Finn are continuing to fight. And Miles says, look at what is happening. And she says, I won't have you lie to me again. Well, this is obviously she's referring to the fact that he did not tell her that he was Spider-Man. But let me tell you something. Not telling someone you're a superhero as opposed to blowing up a city, I understand that Finn is heartbroken from grief. Roxanne killed her brother. I understand from a logistic thing of, I am now an eco-terrorist. Roxanne needs to pay. I will burn their building to the ground. That totally makes sense to me. I get it. The problem is that, when the city is blowing up where everyone will die, that's kind of an all chips in supervillain thing. And although I feel sorry for Finn and understand what she's going through, the fact that she has lost her parents and lost her brother, I mean, she's truly an orphan from what it sounds like now. The idea of just like, well, screw it, I'm going to blow up a city. And I think it was the line that she said. The idea, she said, I won't have you lie to me again. All Miles would have to do is drag her over the side of the building and go, look at what is happening to the reactor. Look at what has happened to this building. The ground is sinking in where the reactor is powering off or giving off these energy waves. Look at what is happening to us. Like, this isn't just going to blow up the building. But she didn't do that. She said, no, you're not going to get out of this, and they fight. It makes absolutely no sense. Until you have to do the boss thing where they have several phases. You beat her, hit her down to the bottom of the, you knock her down to the bottom of the thing. Her gadgets, she has like rocket boots. Her gadgets are kind of messed up. Miles is beaten up, climbs to the reactor and realizes he can also, with his bioelectricity, absorb powers. I know that I've kind of slow-rolled people and I haven't really explained that, but he gets a lot of powers and they kind of use the powers how they want. He absorbs some of the energy from some smaller reactors and just feels tired. He also has supernovaed before. Luckily, no one was around as an underground bunker. But his only chance is to absorb the power from this reactor and try to save people. But at this point, he is now a bomb. Finn comes to him, kind of repairs her equipment, and says, I'm sorry, and he says, I understand. But she said that actually she was falling. I don't know. To me, this is kind of problematic. That she's kind of doubling down on something that she hasn't really... Like, it's one thing if the city was after her and she's like, screw this city. But she's very specifically after Roxanne, and she's very analytical, and I understand she's going through grief, and that will make people do very strange things. But it just doesn't... I mean, it just doesn't... It doesn't hit right for me that this is what's happening. Anyway, so... she basically takes Miles, who's burned and like glowing because he's about, and like electricity's around him because he's about to like explode. She takes him up like Superman in her arms to the sky and says, "It's okay, let go." And he goes, "But you'll die." And she says, "Just let go, it's fine." So she has kind of like redeemed herself. Because I don't think the fall was earned. I don't think the redeemed is earned. You know, there's a lot of things and a lot of press. I know I'm terrible. I'm sorry I don't have an example. But there is a lot of talk about, hey, Batman, I know you don't like killing, but if you would kill some of these people, there would be a lot less problems in Gotham City. Especially like the Joker and people like that. And I think because Finn says I'm sorry and like solves a problem... Like, she's basically just fixing her own mistake. I'm glad not many people were hurt. I think there were some injuries. There's a couple of scenes of Miles' mother. She understands. She finds out that Miles is Spiderman, which is another touch I like. There's a great scene where he comes home hurt with his mascot, but he's wearing the suit. And she says, "What are you wearing?" And it's a really touching scene, and they talk, and she says, "Oh my God, you've been chasing these criminals through the city. That's so dangerous. But I understand who you are. You know, you're your father's son, and I love you." And anyway, when Finn dies in this explosion, saves the city, all this stuff, I think what I was trying to do with this was compare two characters that are in the same game that basically have similar things happen to them that take two different results out of it. And I think this is a perfect example of good and bad, I guess good and bad, like a Breaking Bad, in other words, of... Finn took the wrong lessons from the death of her family. There was a revenge there, which I think is a problem with Joel when I went over it in episode 132. But these two characters live in the same world, and they're affected by the same things. In fact, she says she's sorry about Miles's father, and he's sorry about her brother. But Miles is like, I have to be better and do better. She is like, screw this city. And so I think... Miles Morales is actually in this, even though he's not really... I think what I'm doing is Miles Morales versus Finn in this case. And I think Finn took the wrong lessons. Now, again, like I said with The Last of Us, I like dark stories. And I understand not all stories are up stories. That sometimes people do take the wrong lessons from bad things that happen in their life and either repeat that cycle or are hurt or harmed or hurt and harm other people from it. But I think for me, that scene with Miles Morales and his uncle are so powerful. The fact that, no, you just have to be better. You can't keep doing the same things, Uncle. You lied to me, and you just... And I read in the side information, he basically got a job in the train system to just be like, have a normal job and try to get in on the good graces of the family. But, that's not... He was still stealing from people and doing illegal things, so it didn't help. But in the end... Before Miles has a big fight with Finn, he comes and helps evacuate people out and says, "Don't worry, I'll deal with this. I'll help evacuate people out. Go get Finn and stop the reactor." And so he, at the end, is like kind of realizing, I need to be better, And it was a speech from Miles. And so, Miles says, he keeps telling Finn in the final fight, we can stop this, we can end this. And obviously she doesn't listen to him. And it just... really her motivation rubbed me the wrong way. But I guess it is a good example of what not to do. And so for this case, the people versus Miles Morales versus Finn, I would say that I think Miles Morales is on the up and takes better lessons from his life, the death of his father, his mother being hurt, the fact that he has, this pain too, and he's dealing with it by trying to be a better person and trying to be Spider-Man. And I like the idea of him having, I don't know, not smaller stakes, but just more reasonable stakes. Like, with great power comes great responsibility. That feels kind of, at this point, a little foreboding. But him just saying, just be better. To me, that is a good, positive message that a lot of people you could take out of it is, I just need to be better. So, Miles wins. I know it wasn't much of a case, and everybody's like, that was really scattershot. I tried to take notes and stay in chronological order, but as it goes with every discussion or whatever, as you're reading things and reflecting on things, you just realize there were parts of your argument you didn't realize before. So this is a little bit shorter than the last one, but I had a lot to go over. I had 2 games to go over. Miles Morales, Spider-Man Miles Morales is a shorter game. There's fewer collectibles, fewer missions. I platinumed it fairly quickly. I think I had to play the game again on New Game Plus, and I just had to do a couple. I had to do the main missions over again, and there was a couple I couldn't get because stuff unlocked in a New Game Plus. So I just had to basically play the game again, and I think do one extra thing. But other than that, was good. So I recommend Miles Morales, Spider-Man Miles Morales. I hope this has been somewhat informative. I hope this was a little bit better than the last episode. Again, this may be something that I want to bring back, the People Versus series. So this is like the second episode of that. So I think with that, everybody have a good week. That's it. But I want to remind you guys that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamewithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Please go there and let me know what you think of the show. You can also go to gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. Write me an email. Let me know what you think of the show. Give me a comment, suggestion. Maybe there's a game you want me to review. Or maybe there's a character like this you want me to examine. Be glad to do that. You can also subscribe to the podcast on either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, or YouTube if you want the audio there. So go to those places with the stuff. Rank, like, subscribe, give me the stars, the reviews. All that stuff helps. And you can find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So with that, again, everybody have a good week, and I will talk to you guys again next week.